Right, this is Chat UTD. I'm going to do a piece today on the erosion of the standards at Manchester United. I picked that word erosion purposefully and carefully, really. And I looked up the definition, call me a geek, I looked up the definition of erosion. One of the ones I found was the gradual destruction of something. And that's what's happened at United. It's been a gradual erosion of those standards. I think if it had been a sudden dropping of standards, there'd have been a big kick-off. But because it's happened bit by bit by bit by bit, the standards lower a bit, that becomes normal. The standards lower a bit more, that becomes normal. The standards lower a bit more, that becomes normal. And now we're where we are, we're 13th in the table. And I'm going to talk about my view of the fact that that's happened, and give you some evidence of it happening. And also link it to the behaviour of the owners, the abusive behaviour of the owners towards United and its fans. And I think those two things massively interlink. And then what do we do from here, or what I'm going to do from here personally. So I'm not going to harp back to Ferguson too much today because it's a fruitless exercise. But the standard from 1993 until 2003 was you don't go more than one season without winning a league title. So the standard was you win league titles, and if you don't, there's going to be questions asked. There's going to be an inquiry about it. Between 03 and 07 we didn't win the league. So 04, 05, 06 we didn't win the league, and there was a lot of scrutiny on whether Ferguson still had it or not. Now bear in mind, in that time, in that 3 years, we never finished outside the top three. We won the FA Cup, the League Cup, and we finished runners-up in the FA Cup. So high were the standards at that point. Then he started winning titles again. And to be honest, for a few years, the standard was you win the title and you go far in the Champions League. When he retired then, what's happened since then? Moyes gets a free pass for me because it was an impossible task. He was the wrong man for the job. We were all finding out, what it's going to be like without Ferguson. I think that's kind of harsh to judge too much. It's harsh to judge David Moyes too harshly. But with Van Gaal and Mourinho, they're both pedigree managers, and I think the standard was, from the club, we think they could perhaps deliver us a title, but the standard, if you like, is we've got to get in the Champions League. So already you can see a slight drop. It had gone from competing and trying to win the league every year to we want to win the league, but if we get Champions League, that's okay. That was the remit, really. That's why Van Gaal got sacked, because he didn't get the Champions League. That's ultimately why Mourinho got sacked, because it didn't look like he was going to get us in the Champions League. Now, I hate to compare it, but at the same time, City's standard was, if you don't win the league, we're going to sack you. That happened with Mancini, that happened with Pellegrini. So you can see the difference in those two standards. Ours was getting in the Champions League, theirs was winning the league. When Solskjaer came in, I think there was a shift. I think it was an admission of, we're not going to be winning titles anytime soon. Champions League, getting in the Champions League is the be-all and end-all. It became almost like that Arsenal era when they finished fourth and used to celebrate. That was the target. And Solskjaer, regarding that target, did pretty well because he was the first manager post-Ferguson to do back-to-back Champions League qualifications for the club. But you're not going to win a Premier League title under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. You've got the pedigree to do it. There was other managers available at the end of the season when he'd been a temporary manager, or managers that we could have got, that would have had a far better chance of winning the title. We didn't go for them. So again, that's a dropping of standards a tiny bit further. And it comes to the point then when Ten Hag is the manager, where we finish 8th, and we finish 8th, we lose 14 games. And fair enough, we win the FA Cup, and you've got people begging for him to stay. We finished 8th and lost 14 games. But that's not just happened. That's happened because the standards have just got that little bit lower, and it becomes normal, a little bit lower, it becomes normal, a little bit lower, it becomes normal. So when you finish 8th, as a fan base, we look for reference points and we say, well, you know what, it's not that bad. Moyes finished 7th, Mourinho finished 6th, Mourinho / Solskjaer in that season, we finished 6th. Solskjaer Ranić season, we finished 6th. It's not that bad. And what you've got now, fair enough, I think there's probably a steeper dropping of the standards in the last couple of years. What you've got now is United are 13th, which a few years ago would have caused absolute outcry amongst the fan base. And no one's saying a dicky bird about it because it's just become, well, that's what we are. The standards just keep dropping and dropping and dropping, and we accept it. And the media have a term that they use for really bad performances, like shocking performances that United put in, or anyone puts in. They say it's the nadir of the post-Ferguson era, or the nadir of that season. And these nadirs used to happen probably in the first part post-Ferguson, once or twice a season. Then with Mourinho, it perhaps went up to 3 times a season. Then with Solskjaer, perhaps 4 times a season. The problem is, because again, there's just those nadirs, those low moments have just kept creeping up and up and up. The nadirs have crept up, the standards have gone down. Now, the nadir is the norm. It's week in, week out, pretty much. Because we've accepted it for so long, the dropping of those standards has been accepted. And that's what we see more often than what we don't now. And it's seen as the norm. Now, in an abusive relationship, and make no mistake about it, the way the owners treat the fans and the way the owners have treated this club is abusive. In an abusive relationship, there's a term that I learned this week. It's called breadcrumbing. Don't worry, it's nothing like that. And I'm just going to read out one of the definitions for it. This is your second definition of the day. I'm evolving this channel. Breadcrumbing. Consistently deliver just enough empty promises to keep you invested. If that doesn't describe what Man United have done over the years, I don't know what does. Consistently deliver just enough empty promises to keep you invested. What are the empty promises? Okay, let's go to Sir Jim. Last year he promised elite performance, an empty promise. When there was talk of the takeover, there was basically a false promise of a full takeover, an empty promise of a full takeover, because that's what the club let out to the media, that it was highly likely we were going to be taken over in its entirety. And that's why the protests stopped. False promise, empty promise. Things like the promise of signings, false promises, empty promises. They don't happen. But the problem is, United fans fall for it time after time after time after time. So then what happens is the abusive owner, in this case Ineos and the Glazers, become complacent because they know that we accept those empty promises. They almost have a bit of disdain for us now. That abusive owner has disdain for the peasants that just lap up whatever you throw out to them, and they don't even try and bullshit you anymore. They don't feel like they have to. So this time last year, Jim Ratcliffe was talking about elite performance, which was an empty promise, and he was turning up at the Munich Memorial. This year, he's talking about saving us from bankruptcy, not turning up at the Munich Memorial, not turning up at Dennis Law's funeral. At least last year he was trying to make an impression. This year he's not even bothered because he knows we'll lap up whatever is thrown up by the club and won't kick up a stink. We'll accept it. And alongside that, we accept those falling standards and we continue to accept those. So what you're going to get is a continuation of that. We've got a problem in that for the last few years, we've been buying substandard players. Doesn't mean we've not spent money, but we've bought substandard players because those standards have dropped and dropped and dropped and dropped. Things like Pogba being able to say his dream club's Real Madrid. That would never be accepted previously. Things like Marcus Rashford getting 350 grand a week. That would never have happened previously. So the standards have dropped, standards have dropped, standards have dropped. The standard of the players around the squad has dropped as well. And what you've got now is a team that's 13th in the league. It's unlikely we're going to qualify for Europe, and we haven't got any money. So already, reputable media outlets like The Athletic, Laurie Whitwell, is saying United won't be going for Gyökeres this summer, which I told you in a previous video. They're more likely to go for Rory Delap. Isn't Rory Delap? Liam Delap, sorry, from Ipswich. They're more likely to go for Liam. I was doing so well being serious then. Liam Delap from Ipswich. Again, a substandard player. So what's going to happen? You keep adding substandard players to an already poor team. Where's the miracle going to happen? As I said before, the only hope you've got then is that you get a group of young players that can come through and provide us with some hope. But even with that, young players are potential. There's no guarantee. And you're bringing young players into a poor team. So it's something I would want, I suppose. But it's risky. So you're just going to get a continuation of the same things. And there's no way forward with this ownership. So we need the only way is going to be any changes if we get them out, and that's not going to happen because there's no movement for it to happen. What we need is a catalyst. We need someone. It could be an ex-player or it could be a really respected member of the fan base or whatever, to lead and mobilise and bring together the fan base, and then we can all act on it and hopefully have some ingenuity and do something that will help to get the Glazers gone. But I watched the guy from the 1958 on Webby and O'Neill the other day. No disrespect to the guy, but he couldn't motivate a piss up in a brewery. He had no charisma, zero personality. The group themselves clearly have no ingenuity to do what's needed to be done. They're doing more than what other people would do, and I'm not having a go at them, but I'm saying that to mobilise a fan base as big as United's, it needs more than that. It needs someone with charisma. It needs someone who can galvanise and bring people together, and that people trust and that people look at and go, oh, I believe in what you're saying, so I'm going to act as you're telling me to act, almost. Now, if we look at, I hate to bring this example up, this is a really controversial example to some degree, but people are mouldable, people are impressionable. So you look at Hitler and the way he mobilised tens of millions of people to believe in an evil ideology and commit crimes of unspeakable evil on a mass basis, because there was an impressionable group of people who he had the charisma to charm and to probably con and to lead a certain way. This fan base doesn't need Hitler, but it needs somebody who's got that charisma and personality to lead it, to do something different to what we're doing now. And in the absence of that, we're stuck. The stuff that's come out this week is just unbelievable. Jim Ratcliffe saying that he's essentially, well, it was through The Guardian, but essentially a mouthpiece for the club, and he apparently is saying, he's saved the club from bankruptcy. I said in videos previously, we're close to the wall, we're close to going bankrupt. You can tell that that's what's going on by how much penny pinching they're doing. But the thing I won't get away from is you've given the club £1.3 billion as part of strategic investment. Never air quoted so much in my life as the last few videos that I've done, but strategic investment. Well, that strategic investment's gone straight into the owners' pockets, who are the problem in the first place, who've financially crippled our club, and that you are now a mouthpiece for them to say, this is the only way we can do it. The only way we can do it is by making cuts and putting ticket prices up, etc., because otherwise we'll be bankrupt. No, we're going to be bankrupt because the people you've given £1.3 billion to won't put any of it into the club, and they've crippled the club with debt over the last however many years, and we've not paid a penny of it off, and we're paying interest each year on it, and it's all stuff we spoke about before. So how is this moving forward? What, in 2 or 3 years we're suddenly going to be competitive? You don't get competitive through austerity, not in 2 or 3 years. And as I said, they're not even giving false promises anymore. I suppose that's a false promise, an empty promise. But they're not even trying. They're coming up with stuff that's an insult to United fans' intelligence. But again, United fans will accept it. So I'm gonna talk about something that I think might have an impact on the future of this channel. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I want my kids to watch football, and as in live football, and I don't want them to watch Stockport County. I've no interest in Stockport County. I don't like Stockport County particularly. So if I think about mobilising a group of people and doing something about the Glazers, in 2005 FC United of Manchester was created, and I went a few times when they were at Gig Lane, but my heart wasn't in it. I love the atmosphere and everything, but I wasn't ready to leave my love, which is Manchester United. But this isn't changing. I had hope at that point that something could change. This isn't changing. So I'm going to take my boys to FC United in the next couple of weeks, and I want them to experience a version of United, I suppose. The idea of United, the songs, hopefully the atmosphere. And I don't know what it'd be like. Maybe it'd be rubbish. And I'm not saying that means I won't watch Manchester United or I won't carry on doing these videos, but I'm going to see how that goes, because, as I say, I want them to have a version, a spirit of what Manchester United is, and I don't know if that's going to be it or not. But what I'll do is I'll let you know how that goes for people who might be interested in doing that, because in the absence of any movement at all in the fan base, something needs to change. And I hope that video makes sense. As I said, just to reiterate, just to kind of summarise, the standards have only incrementally, but they drop a little bit, 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 and then you've got what you've got now. Manchester United at 13th in the Premier League table. And as I said before, no one's saying a dicky bird about it, really. I don't want people kicking off against Amorim, but there's no real discontent amongst the fan base in terms of, in a way that's going to mobilise anyone to do anything about it. There's no protest against the owners. There's no demanding of change. The most apathetic fan base you could imagine, and it's our football club's being killed in front of our eyes. What? And I don't use this term metaphorically. I use this literally. What has happened to Manchester United is a criminal act, and the fans of that club who profess to love it sit there and let it happen. So you know what? If there was a militant fan base that was happy to go and make sacrifices for the cause, I'd be all for that. I wouldn't go anywhere else. That would be my main energy. That was my main energy to start this channel in the first place. But no one's got a stomach for a fight, and you can't do it on your own. So I'm going to go and check something else out. Thanks for watching if you did. Glazers out.